My name is Stephen Long, and I host a show here on Rock Candy called Sacred Tension, the podcast about the spiritual discipline of asking questions. We cover topics from LGBT issues to faith and doubt and mental health. We talk to biblical scholars and have conversations about religious abuse and leaving faith and finding it again. We also talk to pastors and skeptics and cult experts who are all sorting out their own journey of faith. Please join me in these conversations on Sacred Tension right here on Rock Candy.
Welcome to the 11 Life podcast.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of 11 Life. For those of you who are just joining us or have never checked out our podcast before, I am Matt. I'm so happy to have you here. I feel very, very, very grateful for your time. I have been looking forward to doing these episodes for quite a while. These are our album commentary episodes for our brand new album, Basic Glitches, that just came out on our label, Rock Candy. The release was completely funded by you, the listener, and by our lovely, lovely community of fans and friends of the show. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be exploring some of the stories behind the songs on Basic Glitches. For those of you who are super nerdy and techie and really into gear and production process, these episodes ended up not really being your bag of things to talk about. It seems like they kind of turned more into these sort of pseudo-philosophical conversations, more digging into the lyrical content and the headspace of the writing for these songs. So I'll be saving a lot of the nerdy, technical mumbo-jumbo for some solo button episodes that we'll do, where we literally go into the Pro Tools sessions and hit the solo button on these tracks and kind of talk through what it took technically to make those things happen. And so I'm not just talking to myself in a dark room alone. I have recruited the help of Stephen Long, the host of the podcast Sacred Tension, to come and help me explore some of the lyrical themes and thought processes behind this record. So in a typical TGIF fashion, these are going to be some crossover episodes. So if you have not checked out Stephen's podcast Sacred Tension, you should do so, because these episodes are going to not only be 11 Life episodes, but they're also going to double as Sacred Tension episodes, do a little bit of cross-pollination there. And it is going to be super fun. Huge hugs and high fives to everybody over at the 11 Life Facebook group. You guys are amazing, and I absolutely love dropping into the conversations that you all are having on the Discord app. If you would like to be a part of the conversations and all the cool things being shared over on the 11 Life Discord app, you should sign up to be a part of the 11 Life Facebook community, and we will get you pointed over there as soon as possible. I want to take a second to personally give some thanks out at the top of the show to the one and only Mark Gerald, who is an absolute sweetheart. He is a fan of the show and a fan of the band, and he sent us these amazing Basic Glitches themed bracelets. They are super, super cool. Maybe I'll even post a picture of them on the Facebook group, but they're awesome. They have a really cool wolf that's sort of like knitted into them, and he also included a little piece of tinder on there for us to be able to start fires with them, and I just thought that was the most thoughtful and wonderful thing. So Mark, thank you so much. If you're listening to this, you have our gratitude and our thanks, and I just wanted to say that publicly because you deserve every single bit of it. If you guys want to check Mark out, I think he is at Chicken Possible on Twitter or somewhere. I'm terrible at memorizing all that stuff, but anyway, it's a super cool dude, avid video gamer, and really, really fun, all around good guy. A huge thank you to everybody who is purchasing vinyl, CDs, teas, knickknacks from our Rock Candy online store. You guys help move the needle on everything that we're doing here, and I can't thank you enough for that. Yeah, so if you haven't been there yet, go check out the online store and see if there's something there that strikes your fancy. It's a really, really quick and direct way to help us continue making the content and the albums and the whoosy whatsies and the everything that we do here in Rock Candy Land. You guys all make it possible and help us attempt to put a little bit of joy back into a world that is constantly sucking it out of us. You guys are amazing. Without further ado, we are going to get into today's episode. Thank you for being here, and on with the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of 11 Life. I could not be happier that you are with us today because we have a couple of episodes that are coming up in sequence by popular demand. We're going to be doing a walkthrough and album commentary for all of the songs off of our new album, Basic Glitches. And a lot of you have already texted in or wrote in different questions or things that you wanted covered in this. And a lot of these things we were not able to get to during the Facebook AMA. And so I'm just compiling some of those questions. And as we go through this experience together, I'm going to be trying to pretend like you're all in the room with me, and we're just having a conversation about it to make sure that everybody feels seen and heard. Speaking of in the room with me, I thought it might be a good call to have my friend Stephen Long of the podcast Sacred Tension, who many of you already know, to come in and be sort of a sounding board for this so that it's not me in a quiet studio all by myself talking about myself to no one. So, Stephen, welcome. Welcome back.
You also forgot to mention that this is not just 11 Life, but also Sacred Tension.
Yeah,
this is airing on both podcasts.
This is a crossover episode.
It is a crossover episode.
For anybody that remembers crossover episodes of like what was that? Step by Step and Family Matters had a crossover episode. I don't know if people even know what that show is anymore, but if you were a kid,
have no idea what you're talking
that grew up
about.
in the 90s, we had Step by Step and we had Family Matters.
Great.
They were okay. So you don't know who Steve Urkel is?
Oh yes,
or
of
the
course I know who that
dysfunctional
is.
family riding a roller coaster.
I know who Steve Urkel is.
Oh, okay. So that's it. There's like a whole crossover episode where Steve Urkel gets a jetpack and like flies over into the set of Step by Step. Anyway.
Okay, great.
It was amazing.
I'm so glad. How are you,
okay,
baby?
Boomer.
How are you, Cupcake?
Yeah, I'm great.
You seem a bit washed up this morning, but that's okay.
Oh,
we all are.
Everybody knows. Everybody can hear it in my voice one way or the other.
Yeah.
So
you're falling off treadmills.
Yeah.
Do they know that story yet?
Yeah, I think that came out
good.
in the last episode. I disclosed a lot of information.
I almost fell off your steps this morning as I was arriving at the studio.
It follows me. It follows me, this whole falling off of things, losing your balance.
Yeah, so I almost fell down your steps. You could have just like come out of your house this afternoon looking for me and I would be on the on the lawn with a broken neck.
Yes. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get right into the episode. So the first song off of this record is a song called Killing My Vibe. I'm pretty sure that of all of the songs on the record, this one was probably written the quickest. It sort of started out with like this kind of blues riff that I was playing around with on a synthesizer, just kind of took on a life of its own. I feel like on the last record, Rad Science, we were trying to figure out how to kind of ditch a lot of the guitars and have synthesizers fill in for them. And I kind of feel like with this song in particular, we nailed it, at least to our satisfaction upon the record being released. We'll probably get like a year out from now and not really like any of it, but such is life.
So before we talk about that, do we want to talk about the concept of the album itself? Like what motivated the album, the place it's coming from, why it's called Basic Glitches, et cetera, et cetera.
Thanks for slowing me down, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I've had a really difficult time sort of explaining what this record is about because I feel like it's incredibly personal, and my best way that I have of describing it is that the songs I feel like sort of speak for themselves. When I'm thinking about how to convey what it is in my mind, like what the record's about, I feel like I did just that lyrically in a lot of ways with the songs.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So the whole idea behind the record itself is this idea that there are dualities in everyone. Like if you look at the album cover, it's like a collage work of a tiger and a child. A lot of the theme of the record revolves around there being a duality to most things, even to things that we perceive as being truth or things that we perceive to be safe. In the case of the record, it's addressing a lot of different religious topics and sort of diving into the toxicity of certain types of religion. Just personally, for me, what that's been like within Protestant evangelicalism or growing up in the Bible Belt and experiencing a lot of that. So I feel like there's a lot of themes that kind of go along with that. And one of them is that like over the course of the record, I feel like I'm coming to terms with the fact that I don't perceive myself to be a Christian. I don't subscribe to being a Christian. And it's taken a lot of years of kind of an evolution of thought that's kind of brought me to that place. And this record is absolutely an exploration of that and sort of a coming to terms with what that's been like, good and bad. Because leaving something that you kind of grew up with or having your understanding of something very fundamental in your life evolve and change and warp into something completely different. It's part of just growing up.
So yes, and I think this is my favorite album that you've ever done. I fucking love this album.
Oh my gosh.
So I love the lyrical content in it. I love the story behind it because I feel like I've been able to watch some of that process in real time, in real life. So we've kind of been on this journey together with Rock Candy and creating this space where like a bunch of ex-evangelicals or people working through the faith that they were given.
Yeah.
Where we can do that safely. And so we've kind of been on this weird, uncomfortable journey together. But also, I just think it is like musically one of the best things you've ever done. I fucking love it. Do you want to sign my bare tits now or after the show?
Is there parentheses around the word bear?
No.
Bare tits. Oh, yeah. That's great. That's where I am today. I'm 5 years old.
Great. I have the body of a podcaster, which means I do in fact have bare tits.
A bodcaster.
Of a bodcaster. Great.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and I feel like I have done my best to sort of bring everybody along with me that wants to be there and also try not to alienate people. But at the same time, I know that a lot of our band's history is kind of rooted in obviously like the Christian music industry, which is primarily like Protestant and evangelical. And so when we were kids, kind of just starting out, we didn't understand what that was or what role we were playing in it. We were just kind of like, well, we all identify as Christians and this would be a really cool opportunity for us to
do.
Yeah, it'd be a cool thing to do. Because all of our other friends are working really shitty jobs, and we just got offered this. I mean, we were working awful jobs too, and we just kind of get offered this record deal and thrown into this whole world of like being in front of a lot of Christians and them thinking that you somehow have a more special relationship to our Lord and Savior than it's actually true. And the fact of the matter is we were just kids when we started out and didn't really know.
And it's something that kind of happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with this record, I can totally understand why people that know that side of us would listen to it and maybe feel alienated or disappointed or have you been getting feedback like that? The weird thing is I feel like we've always, it doesn't matter what we do, we've always gotten that kind of feedback.
Okay.
Even when we were a part of like the Christian music industry, we get letters from people that were disappointed that we didn't reflect their Christian values or their Christian beliefs, or that we said a curse word from stage, or that we made a joke about something that they thought was really not funny. So there's just always been that. There's always been that walking that line of like, you can't please everybody. And if you spend all of your time and creative energy just walking on eggshells around everyone, you rob yourself of you. Like you ultimately just become, an app for people to touch, and that's it.
And you start to feel like this incredibly brittle thing that can just break at any moment.
Right.
Like you're trying to protect this brand, this image of you.
Yeah.
And I am personally so fucking done with that because, okay, sorry, I forget. It's been a while since I've been on 11ty Life. Can I swear on 11ty Life?
You can say anything you want here. This is a completely safe space.
I forget what the difference is between like talking to you off mic and talking to you on
I think
mic.
Everybody that listens to the show knows that I don't even want to call it a potty mouth.
I have a potty mouth. I have a straight up potty mouth. So I have been on either side of that equation that you just talked about.
Sure.
Where, I used to be a kind of Christian writer, religious writer, blogger. I would go speak at festivals and all that kind of stuff. and people looking up at me as if I had a better idea of what it meant to be a good person than they did.
Right.
And I didn't at all. This was just something that kind of fell into my lap, and I was just doing it because it was something to do and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course.
And I've been on the other side of the equation as well, where I have been like that little high school Christian band groupie, obsessing over some tooth and nail band or whatever.
Right.
And our friend Kevin McCreary talks about how our history is going through POD lyrics looking for proof of God. So totally being like that,
right?
That person as well, looking up to creators, and I'm done with all of it. Now I try to create a space where I never feel like I ever have to lie about what I think or who I am.
I think that's kind of amazing. I don't know why it seems like there was a complete absence of that within the version of Christianity that I grew up in. It was always just kind of like toe the party line, make sure like this is what you're constantly being surrounded by authority figures telling you what the right way to live your life was. If you're being a good Christian, this is what your life looks like. If you're serving the Lord, if you're doing the right thing, these are, you will receive all of these different kinds of blessings, whether it's inner peace, the peace that passes all understanding, or, in some cases it's material wealth. In some cases, that's how God chooses to bless you. In other cases, it's relational wealth. I mean, it's just all, the older that I got, the more all of that seemed like a load of horseshit.
Right.
Maybe some of the most well-meaning horseshit that I've ever encountered, but just simply not true.
It's just not true.
Because you encounter people, you encounter truths about other people and truths about your own experience that you're having here on the planet that is completely contradictory to that. And
I think one of my big concerns about that whole world is I feel like it puts people in a position of just having to perpetually lie in some way, making little white lies, maybe
or compromise their own internal truth to fit in with the group,
which is a form of lying.
Yeah,
really. I mean, that is a form of dishonesty.
Yeah,
it seems benign in the moment, and maybe it is, but I think it all builds up to something very, very toxic. So, like, if you don't feel like you're allowed to talk about your doubts about God or the church or the historical record of Jesus or all of that stuff, if you don't feel like you're allowed to discuss that, then you feel like you have to constantly make these little compromises. And I think at the end result of all of that is just a lot of suffering. And I see that in your album. I see you dealing with that kind of lifetime of suffering that you're coming out of, that I dealt with too. Right?
Yeah. I mean, and the weird thing is, it's like, I'm not the kind of person whose like first instinct is to try to place blame or try to figure out who's at fault. I feel like this album is very much kind of sifting through all of the residue of growing up in that specific subsect of Christianity in America, and kind of tracing a lot of the issues that I have as an adult now, like amazingly high levels of anxiety and existential dread and all of these different things that I'm, beginning to trace back to all of this. Falling off treadmills now, for crying out loud. I mean, can't even have a typical day at the gym because of this shit. But yeah, I'm on my own journey of sort of unraveling the ball of yarn and seeing where that leads. And I need a very warm and kind and accommodating space for that to happen. And I'm learning how to give that to myself, because for so much of my life, I feel like my brain has been a constant ball of yarn, a constant thing to be like Rubik's Cube that I'm always working out, and that like the world around me, people, relationships, emotions, all these different things feel like things that I have to fix or manipulate or control or make better in some way or come to terms with in some way. And I've spent so much of my life just in that level of anxiety that it's at this point in my life, now in my 30s, I'm like, I have to, just out of necessity, have to figure out a way to be present, to accept, to just be here in the moment, to just accept what's happening gosh, almost like almost like creating your own sort of personalized AA meeting,
Yes.
where you have your own 12
Absolutely.
steps. And
And instead of going to therapy, we take a deep breath,
right?
turn on the mic, and talk about it.
Yes.
All right.
To the best of our ability. Is that a good overview?
I think
of the
that's a great
record? Do you feel like
overview.
it's a good
No, I
overview?
think that's fantastic.
Good.
All right. So now,
Good for us.
yay, we're getting through this, people. We are feeling particularly washed up this morning. I didn't even drink last night. Matt drinks every single day, way too much. So I assume that he's hungover, but I'm not. I feel like I am.
No, I'm not hungover. I feel like half of my week is me just constantly fighting a malaise
Yeah.
of just like, where did my energy go? And the other half is me being the complete opposite of that, where it's like I have so much energy and I can't
I get
can't
that.
focus any of it.
That's me too.
Yeah.
Yay.
So
Maybe that's why we get along so well.
maybe
We have such similar neuroses.
yeah, or complementary neuroses.
There you go.
So should I try to dive into Killing My Vibe?
Yes, do it.
Okay, cool. So we just shared like a lyric sheet of what these songs are. Sometimes it helps me to like read through the lyrics to kind of get back into a headspace of what I was thinking about when I wrote a lot of this stuff. And so at the risk of all of this sounding self-important, which I don't mean for it to, but maybe it's going to as I'm
That's
talking
okay.
about it. Yeah, it just is what it is. I remember writing this song starting out with that very first line, 70s sci-fi future just sent us the bill. We're all sedated and relatable and ready to chill. And I grew up like watching a ton of sci-fi stuff. I was super into Star Trek and Star Wars and the X-Files and all kinds of 90s pomp and circumstance on television. And so it just like struck me that there was this, throughout all of the content that got created in the 60s, 70s, 80s, sort of projecting what we were going to look like in the future as a race, it always seemed to center around things being so much more accommodating and things being so much more civil and us being in control of our emotions and us having very regulated spaces in which to exist. I think a little bit of this also came from A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, right? Is that who wrote that book? I hope I'm not misquoting that.
George Orwell.
Did not write Brave New World.
George Orwell? No.
George Orwell wrote War of the Worlds.
No, that's H.G. Wells.
That's H.G. Wells.
Pull yourself together. No. Okay. So
Get it
Orwell
together.
wrote 1984.
1984.
Yes. In
Right.
Animal Farm. Huxley did write Brave New World. No,
Yes.
wait. Is that right?
Huxley, I'm pretty sure
I
Huxley
always
wrote
get
Brave New
those-
World.
I always get those dystopian sci-fi novels mixed up. Hold
Yeah.
on. Brave New World.
Okay, so while you're looking that up,
Uh-huh.
so that was that all of those
All just
kinds
Huxley.
of
Yeah, we're
yes, all those ideas of the future and what mankind looks like. I feel like we are now kind of a manifestation of what a lot of those projections were. Like the sci-fi writers of our parents have somehow very accurately predicted how we would be as people, maybe not like to the extent that where technology would be.
Yeah.
Because
But where
we're
we
supposed
are,
to be in
like,
flying cars right now.
emotionally and societally.
Right. But societally, I feel like they got so much of it right, particularly
Yeah,
Huxley and Brave New World.
I think so too.
Um,
And Ray Bradbury with Fahrenheit 451.
yes.
Have you read that?
Oh, yeah. One of
Good.
my favorites.
Good boy.
Yeah. Montag.
Yes. All right.
Yeah. So this song is just it's kind of whiny. It's kind of like an angry lament.
Okay, can I tell you something really hilarious?
Yeah.
When I first heard this song, it sounded like a glittery synth pop Marilyn Manson song. So I'm a huge Marilyn Manson fan, and it sounds like Marilyn Manson to
That
me.
might be the highest compliment anyone's given me.
Really?
Marilyn Manson has amazing sounding records. Like
Yeah,
he
he
always
does.
has.
Yeah, he does. No, this sounds like a Marilyn Manson song to me, in a weird way.
Maybe without my voice. I think my voice might
Yeah.
make it a little
But
too.
just like melodically and lyrically, it sounds like a Manson song. Like it
Yeah.
sounds like something from, I don't know, like the Mechanical Animals era.
yeah, I think
back in
maybe
the
I was trying to
90s.
tap into a little bit of Manson, but also maybe a little bit of like early 9 Inch Nails too.
Oh yeah.
Like it
I can
kind of
definitely
strikes
hear
me
that.
as being a little Trent Reznor-y.
Mm-hmm.
I should say that it's inspired by things that are Trent Reznor-y. I'm not trying to compare myself to Trent Reznor, who's obviously
We are not worthy.
top of his game.
Yes.
So there's that. And then obviously like there's Harry Potter references already in the second verse. Yeah, just this, I think it's just this idea that we don't get to control what our childhoods are. When adults are still making decisions for us, like we don't necessarily have the ability or develop the ability, I feel like, to make good, or at least I don't feel like I did, to make good decisions for myself and for my mental health and for my physical health. And you just kind of get handed all these different things. You get handed all these distractions very early on in life.
Mm-hmm.
Garbage food, snack food.
Uh-huh.
Also, like the entertainment that you're given is kind of mind numbing if it's not PBS programming. Hot take. I'm just kidding. None of that's true. But yeah, I think it's just, it kind of is hitting on this existential crisis of growing up and feeling like you got handed all of this different stuff to kind of work through yourself.
Yeah.
That you have to figure out how to work through yourself because nobody's going to reach down and help you do that.
So those things for you are the things that you feel like you got handed that you had to work through yourself.
Oh gosh. I don't even know. I don't even know how to dive into this without it sounding like weird or accusatory.
No one cares.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, I feel like I was definitely, I'm obviously the first in the birth order. I say obviously, we talked about that on a few episodes ago. So just for everybody that's
You're
been
an
listening,
eldest. I'm a youngest.
You're a youngest.
Yeah. Which is why I really feel like I feel like the two of us fall naturally into like this very bizarre elder brother, younger brother working relationship. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's true because I take everything so seriously and I'm constantly
And I'm just like
trying to talk myself out of being serious about everything.
And I'm just like, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. What was your question?
What are the things? What are the things that you feel? I mean, we've already talked about how, like in the intro to the album, you talked about how you were just kind of handed the Christian music industry thing. And I assume your Baptist, was it Baptist? That your Baptist faith is one of those things. I think
you go through a lot of experiences that sort of disillusion you.
Sure.
And part of, I feel like the theme of this song is probably just millennial disillusionment.
Yep.
It's almost like maybe a harder form of like the song Holding Out or something that we did. Like it's a little more snappy, a little more sarcastic. And
another great song.
Mean, yeah. So like, oh yeah, like we've got the map to the backyard bones that you buried down in some stay-at-home moms and pop secretary. Like,
do you want me to do a dramatic reading?
not for this one.
Okay.
No, not for this one. For something a little goofier, that would be amazing. It's just like you grow up and you all of a sudden one day wake up and you understand what scandal is. You experience the scandal. You experience, all these different, even something as simple as like a sexual ethic that is put on you. As a child in purity culture.
A purity culture thing.
Right.
Okay, so I'm really glad that you brought that up because so many of my friends who are still Christians, so I have one really, really great friend who is still, I wouldn't call him evangelical, but he's still very much just a Protestant Christian.
Yeah.
But we went out to lunch the other day and he was just like, this whole purity culture thing is such bullshit. And there are so many people who are kind of struggling to work through the catastrophic emotional effects of purity culture and that it's just okay to be human and human beings are sexual.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that too. Far be it from me to decide what someone's sexual ethic should be.
Right.
But I think, in terms of the song, just kind of like realizing that nobody has their shit together and that at any moment, the cards can just fall.
Right.
Which I guess is just,
life.
That's just real life.
Do we want to move on to the next?
Yeah, sure. Why
or
not?
do you have more? Do you have more to say about this one?
No, I think.
Do you want to say anything about the nerdy, technical, musical side of it? I don't know what the words are for this.
No, that's good.
Okay.
The only thing like technically weird about this one is that, I mean, most of this record is just, or of that song in particular, is just a whole lot of different samples stacked on top of each other, and I think that whole record might have just been one synthesizer, which is like the Moog Sub Fatty.
That whole record, meaning this entire...
that whole song.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, just kind of one thing. So
Moog Fatty.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
A Sub Fatty.
Sub Fatty.
Fatty.
Are you calling me names
No.
right now? Are you insulting me?
Oh no, I'm becoming so aware of the disparity between like things that are going to interest me or things that I nerd out about and things
that are going to interest
you could not be bothered to give a shit.
Things that are going to interest your audience versus my audience.
Oh, of course.
No, but it's fine. You can totally geek out, and I'm sure probably just one listener of Sacred Tension will absolutely love it, which is great. Go for it.
Moving on.
Go.
Okay. So the next song is Fear the Fire.
I love this song.
Oh, you're a gem.
I'm gonna rip off my shirt right now, and you're gonna sign my titties right now. I need your signature. If I had a baby, I would make you sign my baby.
Oh,
I have
that's
cats.
sweet.
You can sign my cat. I don't have them with me though.
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So this song, I mean, I think of everything on the record. This one, I remember kind of digging pretty deep for, like throughout the writing process of this record, of Basic Glitches, like in particular, a lot of where these songs come from are me jotting down the thoughts that I'm having right after I'm getting out of therapy sessions.
Uh-huh.
And so a lot of it's kind of that, which in this way was helpful for me because it sort of demystifies therapy. It kind of takes all the bits that you are exploring when you're talking to somebody who doesn't have a stake in your life personally. They're just kind of there to talk you through what you're thinking and to help you make sense of your thought patterns and your experiences. And so a lot of the stuff that I talked about in therapy was just how hard it is to come to terms with the fact that you grew up the way that you did. What I mean by that in particular, that I think this song is about, is like not really quite being able to come to terms with the fact that there were adults in my life who were continuing to perpetuate this narrative that, I mean, from a very young age, that if you don't get your shit together, you will burn. You will burn in hell.
Which is traumatizing.
It was traumatizing for me.
Yeah.
It was
traumatizing for me as well.
Yeah.
Like I remember being a 9-year-old child staying up at night terrified of hell.
Yes.
Like it just horrified me.
Of course.
It was so terrifying.
Well, your father was also a pastor.
Yeah, both my parents are pastors.
Yeah.
Yep. You can see how well that turned out.
Yeah.
So also that one lyric, touched myself, brought about the apocalypse. When I heard this, I swear to God, when I heard this song, I thought touched myself thinking about the apocalypse. For some reason and I'm like, I wonder what that means. I need to ask Matt about that. Like getting off on thinking about the end times, which is what a lot of Christians do.
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking. Anyway,
it's kind of this whole narrative of like, it's always talking about how things are going to be better when we're dead.
Right.
It is just constantly looking forward to the sweet release of this life. And the fact of the matter is, like, nobody really has any proof of what happens after this. And so if you dedicate your entire life to an ideology that everything here on earth right now is going to be miserable, it's going to be awful, it's going to be nothing but a struggle, and the only thing that we can look forward to is the sweet respite of death.
Yeah.
I just feel like what an awful way to live your life. Like what an awful way to experience the wonder or the miracle of what it is that we're even here at all, that we can feel things like love and loss, and that we can connect with each other on a very deep and personal emotional levels and experience all of the roller coaster ride of emotions that makes life so rich.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would throw all of that out the window because you can't control it.
So this song really, really connects with me growing up gay in the church. Like it really resonates, especially so these lyrics right here: crushed my health while my trust turned to rust in you. I prayed away myself for you. That was my entire life as a gay person in the church. Kind of this constant self-negating to hold myself up to this impossible theoretical standard of heterosexuality and masculinity.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, then I was somehow, distorting God's plan for the cosmos.
Right.
And there were grave consequences to that.
Which is still an idea that somebody painted for you. That somebody painted for them.
Someone created that.
Right.
And implanted that in me. And it's like it held me hostage. It was like a virus.
Yeah.
It was like an intellectual thought virus that just made me sick for, I would say, most of my life.
Yeah.
Looking back now, this song resonates so much. As going through ex-gay therapy, trying to go to conferences, going to support groups, reading books, praying, talking to friends, doing everything I could to not be who I am,
right?
Which is a gay person,
right?
And finally, I realized that nothing would change that, but it took a lot of pain and suffering and misery and unnecessary suffering to eventually get there. And so this song connects so much with
all
that.
In the name of God's best for you.
All in the name of God's, and that's the irony. That is the kind of the disgusting irony of it.
Yeah.
When the result is like this Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Do you know what that is? Where it's or not by proxy, but just Munchausen syndrome, where it's like you're perfectly well, but you still believe that you need a wheelchair anyway.
Right.
And that's really, I feel like that's what growing up in that toxic evangelical culture is like. Because whether you're gay or not, we all have some part of ourselves, something that we feel isn't right.
Yeah.
Isn't good enough. And we feel like we are sick because of that thing. And the end result is we confine ourselves to these tiny little kind of broom closet worlds, to these little, claustrophobic worlds when there's the whole world out there.
Yeah, of course.
And there's this whole world of experience.
Yeah.
And so, this song just resonates so hard for me.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I was absolutely thinking about all of my gay friends when I wrote the line, I prayed away myself for you. Now in pop culture, pray away the gay is it was a very real thing.
And it's still a very real thing.
But now it's kind of like floated to the top of pop culture where this is how we come to terms with the fact that there are people who are trying to oppress the sexuality of others in the name of Christ. And there's been so many different like cartoon episodes about this. One of my favorite ones was King of the Hill.
I haven't seen that one.
South Park. Yeah. I mean, there's such great commentary on that. I feel like now, it was a hard thing to think about. I feel like in that way, I've always related to or felt like I understood in some way what people meant or what people in the LGBTQ community who have had this experience and who have tried to become something else. I've always felt like I understood on a very fundamental level how frustrating or difficult or damaging that was. Because for me, it wasn't homosexuality. For me, it was just the overthinking of the thing. It was the existential crisis.
And it's also just being human.
Just being a person.
Just being a person with a body and a mind. It's so I feel like parts of evangelical culture really villainize parts of being human.
Yeah.
It's just what it means to be a human being, what it means to have sexuality, or what it means to have a brain.
Me, that was being told to oppress. Sorry. Yes. It's being told to tamp down my emotions and to pretend like I didn't have them, or that because I could not fabricate the right emotions at the right time, that somehow I wasn't who I should have been. I mean, most of my childhood was me just being terrified that I didn't feel the way I thought all the other Christians around me felt. Like I would hear pastors stand up on stage and say, you have to know that you know that you know. And when Christ comes into your life and he changes you, and like when Christ comes into your life and he changes you, you know it, you feel it. You feel that peace that passes all understanding, and it's something that you can always come back to. And now as an adult, I look at that and say, in what relationship would you ever enter it and then feel like the person on the other side of that relationship wanted to come change everything about you, that would be okay, and that's going to end up being functional. That you just forfeit all of these things about yourself. Yes.
Or expect a relationship to not have any doubt.
Right.
Every relationship has misgivings. Every relationship has doubt.
Right.
And so to expect that of an even more tenuous relationship with this almighty invisible being that you can't hear, taste, touch, smell, or see is cruelty.
Yeah.
It's so cruel. It's a form of torture.
Well, and as well-meaning as I feel like all of these people were, I feel like they have their own set of struggles and things. Like,
and it was handed to them.
Right. I can't imagine what it's like to be a pastor and to know that everyone's human and has doubts and are intrinsically flawed people, and to stand up on stage and to constantly be spewing this rhetoric that everything's fine, everything's okay. If you're doing this right, there won't be any of these issues, and it somehow makes you acceptable to Christ. You get caught into this whole circular thinking where it's like, the more miserable that I am, the closer to Christ I must be.
Yeah. And I know for a fact that a lot of pastors do have doubts.
Yeah.
Because some of them talk to me about it.
Yeah.
But they never feel like they can be honest.
Right.
In front of their congregation. They never feel like they can speak clearly about what they're actually feeling.
Because they're afraid of losing the illusion of leadership, or, of feeling like they have something to offer. So there's that. You were asking me about, I touched myself, brought about the apocalypse. A line in there. That was very much like it's like sexual shaming.
Yeah, of course.
That I feel like I experienced as a kid.
Yeah, me too.
Like if you're doing this, if you're like behaving with your body in this way, God sees. And can we just go off on a tangent here for a second real quick? This is one of the issues
with the
perviest
God ever.
Like, I don't understand why you're constantly being told that you're the pervert, but then this deity that you're supposed to be worshiping is the one who's
obsessing over it.
Who's watching you masturbate.
Who's thinking about it way more than you are.
Right. And who is happy for you when you find someone to share your marriage bed with. And that you, like the idea that Jesus also, I don't know, for everybody who's listening who grew up in Protestant evangelical culture, you know exactly what we're talking about. You get told and painted this narrative that like Jesus is somehow, if you find the right person and you're both virgins when you're married, and you engage in
somehow something to
right?
be it's somehow something to be celebrated if you're both virgins.
Just the whole idea of Christian purity and saving yourself for marriage, and like the way that it gets put to you is that your value is tied up in your sexual purity.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Which is, I feel like it's probably one of the most damaging things you could ever say to young people.
Yes.
That this is your worth is in not having fucked anyone before.
Well, and my belief is that virginity doesn't exist. I don't think virginity is a thing. I think there are just people. I think there are just... There
are no virgins, there are just people.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sexuality is a spectrum, and I think the experience of sex is a spectrum as well. And at no point does a threshold get crossed.
Yeah.
It's just something people do. And there can be good sex, and there can be bad sex, and there can be momentous sex that feels like a crossing of a threshold. And then there's not that at all.
Yeah.
And so I feel like drawing a line in the sand and saying this is where you lose your virginity is stupid.
Doesn't quite make sense.
It makes zero sense.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as virginity. We're just human beings.
Yeah. I totally understand that take.
Anyways, if you want to talk about the before we do that, actually, hold on. Let me pull up. Which one are we on? Fear the Fire.
Fear the Fire.
If that's where we were, the lyrics that we've been covering now, this bit I feel like is where I am now, where it says, we don't fear the fire and we don't need your ceremony, sacraments or matrimony. We don't fear the fire and we don't need permission slips. Your vaccinized evangelists had a dream that you watched me die. You lit the cigarette that burned me alive. So give my best to the 99. We don't fear the fire. And it's like this, I interpret that as like this place of liberation, of just being like, fuck all of you. Personally, we don't need these ceremonies. We don't need these sacraments. We don't need these affirmations from the religious world. We can just be who and what we are without shame.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you intended as you were writing it, but that's what I interpreted.
That's very, very accurate on a lot of different levels. Like the line, like, we don't fear the fire is this idea that the idea of hell was held over me for so long. And if I'm really honest with myself, like, I think I probably stopped believing in that, in a literal hell years and years ago.
Yeah.
Because I didn't quite fit any narrative that made sense to me.
It's also
even
just
about
too
Christianity
horrific.
Or about like what I understood the person of Jesus to be, or his role within history. And it was like, you have these gatekeepers of religion. You have these people that are the social influencers of Protestant evangelicalism in America, who want to hold the keys to how you interpret the sacred text, and they want to hold the keys to morality and ethicality and what that looks like, and tie all of their politics to it as well. I feel like in doing that, they completely miss the point of religion for people, or what, or the purpose that religion is supposed to serve. Yeah.
And to that end, actually, I can sit here all day long and just bash religion, and just sound like, a ponytailed Birkenstock wearing Mountain Dew drinking new atheist.
Right.
And there's a degree to which that's accurate, but I do think that there's such a thing as healthy religion, which is why I still consider myself a deeply religious person.
Sure.
It's like there's a difference between healthy and unhealthy religion. And so for me personally, for some people, it's best for them to just get rid of religion altogether. And like, that's great. Like, go off. Like, that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
For me, I find it healthier for whatever reason to retain my religiosity, but to reinvent it, to find a better, healthier religion that is self-aware, that is compassionate, that embraces everyone, that is personal, that is
that expresses the truth about you,
that expresses the truth about me, is flexible, that can evolve, and does not have this idea of horrible punishment after we
extended cash spending limit, flexible dates,
absolutely,
international flights.
All right. Do you want to get into the nerdy technical stuff?
Well, I mean,
unless you have more to say here.
No, this song means an awful lot to me, because it's also me kind of like, everybody who listens to the podcast knows that I used to be a professor at a college, and that ultimately ended up having to leave that position because they wanted us to sign a document that said very specifically that we believe the Bible is only translated
you were the fall
one
guy
specific
for the gays.
way. Yeah. And so I found myself in this weird situation where I was like doing my absolute best to stand up for my friends and my family who are part of the LGBTQ community, and also just for the religious freedom of saying, like, you don't have a chokehold on the Bible. Like, you are a small independent college claiming that like nobody can work for you if they don't adhere to these ideas and beliefs about the Bible. And at that point, like, everybody that was working there, like, was, for all intents and purposes, like could hang with a lot of Christian teaching.
Yeah.
It was a very, very broad table.
It was a broad, and that was what was so great about that college. But then they put people again into a position where either they left or they felt like they have to lie.
Right.
Because everyone will eventually, I think some people, this isn't true, but eventually someone is going to have doubt about that line.
And they don't need to feel like it's not a safe place to express the truth about yourself, which is that you doubt everything you're supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
Doubt comes from a healthy place oftentimes.
For sure.
Yeah, so the matrimony line is totally came from that.
Okay.
Of feeling like, why is everybody sitting here like putting such a high premium on the acceptance and the love of this community, of the Christian community, when ultimately you could just say fuck it. Wait, it's not important. I understand that it's a lot. That is a reductionist take on all of that to some degree. But I just mean like it comes from a place in me personally of just that frustration of like, fuck it. Take your version of marriage that you feel so strongly about.
Yeah.
Take all of these different things that you consider to be sacred within your religion that you're beating everybody else up over, that you are constantly barring the gates, not allowing anyone entry into your world. Like I came to this boiling point where I was like, fine, take it.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of like trying to convince everybody here in this room that I have a place here and that I can exist here. Just take the room.
Story of my life.
I don't have to come back.
Story of my fucking life. No, for real though, that I feel like what you just said, like you can have it, like I'm tired of trying to carve out I'm tired of fighting for my inclusion.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why I've really abandoned the term Christian for myself, because I'm tired of fighting for my place within the church. It's just like, fuck this. Ever since I've been a public Christian for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And it feels like that entire time, it was always a battle. It was always a fight. And eventually people are just going to give up. Like eventually it doesn't matter how strong you are. Eventually people are just going to be fatigued and just walk away.
Everyone has a breaking point.
Exactly. And so, no, I totally relate to that. Also, I hate weddings. So fuck matrimony. They're and actually John and I, we're not legally married.
Right.
Yet. Really the only reason we will be legally married at some point is for the legal benefits. That's the only reason why.
Yeah.
We have zero intention of ever having a wedding or ceremony. It's like, that's not important to us.
That's awesome.
Anyways.
Yeah. The only other thing I would even want to say about this record or about this song in particular, somebody asked me about on a Skype call the other day. They were like, so what does give my best to the 99 mean? And I was like, well, when I was growing up in church, there was this narrative that was sort of half Bible, half created, that, you grow up hearing that Christ is the good shepherd. You describe yourself as being like a lamb, like within the church. I know this sounds so crazy when I'm talking about it now, but if you grew up in the church in this way, you'll totally understand this metaphor of like, God is the good shepherd.
Right.
And he will leave the fold, and a good shepherd will leave the 99 sheep in his fold to go find the one lamb who has gone astray. While that's supposed to be a really comforting thing to you, that somehow, no matter where you are in your life, that God is always there, that he's always trying to bring you back into the fold. Over time, it took on a totally different meaning for me. Like, I understood the intended purpose of it, but then the older that I got, the more I just kind of related more to the lamb that couldn't stay.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't be with that group. I feel like I don't have a place there, that I don't. It's been such a struggle of trying to fit in that it's almost like looking back at everybody and saying, I'm fine being the one. Like, you guys can be the 99 if you want to, but where I am in life, I just feel more comfortable saying, well, I'm here. And if your mythology, if your about Christianity is true, then and there is such a thing as Christ, and he is a good shepherd, and he does bring people back into the fold, then trust in that.
Yeah.
Find solace in that narrative. But for me, it doesn't matter anymore. That I need to leave. I need to figure out ways of like withdrawing the poison out of myself and figuring out a healthier way to do life and to view religion in the world. And
I
yeah.
100% get that.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
So for everybody listening, we're obviously getting a lot more wordy, and
This happens every single time.
it happens
we do a
every
show
time
together.
Steven and I do a podcast together. So yeah, we're going to split this up into a few different episodes. And if this is the kind of thing, if this is your bag and you're totally into talking about the thought process behind the song lyrics and everything, yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're not into that, don't worry. I'll be back to interviewing Satanists and sex workers in no time. So, but I think I do actually think that listeners of Sacred Tension will be into this, because it does get into like that, that personal religious history and processing that is kind of the bedrock of Sacred Tension. Also, you do all the music for the show, so they hear this music, and so they get to hear the voice and the life behind the music of Sacred Tension.
Right.
All right. So shall we call it a show?
We shall call it a show. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We will be back next week with brand new album commentary for Basic Glitches.
Bye.
Bye.
11T Life is a production of Rock Candy